All right, let's jump straight into this explainer. Today, we're going to conduct a psychological autopsy on one of the absolute most disorienting, dreamlike accounts you'll probably ever encounter. We're looking at a source document called The Fall of Ruelles, which is narrated by a man named Melvin Stevenson. And let me tell you, from the very first sentence to its chilling conclusion, Melvin's account is a masterclass in psychological isolation and the complete, utter collapse of reality. We're going to break down this document to understand exactly how Melvin's world just dissolves around him and why his final reaction to this whole nightmare is so profoundly unsettling.
Right off the bat, we have this single haunting realization from Melvin. I was outside, but now I'm inside. It sounds so incredibly simple, right? But as you'll see, it perfectly captures the entire trajectory of his experience. It represents a total loss of autonomy. It's that creeping, sinking feeling we've all had when a door clicks locked behind us, but magnified to a terrifying degree. It's physical entrapment for sure, but it's also a massive psychological shift as his mind begins to warp and he crosses the threshold from a recognizable world into something completely alien.
Section 1. A hazy beginning. The illusion of normalcy.
What's really interesting here is the incredibly sharp juxtaposition happening in Melvin's environment. On one hand, you have a perfectly mundane afternoon outdoors. He's sitting on some open-air bleachers, the weather is nice, he's playing what he thinks is checkers with an acquaintance named Edgar, and they're just eating peanuts. But then, the bizarre early warning signs start bleeding in. Melvin admits his memory is hazy. He doesn't even know the name of the estate he's staying at. Out of nowhere, a deeply hostile, indifferent man named Morgan shows up and forces Edgar to leave against his will. And get this, most startlingly, when Melvin is picking up some scattered food, he finds a piece of fruit that looks exactly like a pale red strawberry, except it's the size of a man's shoe. It's a massive, completely unnatural glitch in his reality right there in the picnic basket.
Section 2. Dragged into Ruelles. Total isolation.
After Morgan coerces Melvin to leave the grounds, he's dragged into this sprawling, impossible complex. Morgan tells him this place is called Ruelles, maybe a palace or a university. But the architectural details Melvin records are just wild. He describes a truly enormous structure made entirely of white marble. As he's pulled deeper inside, he realizes there are absolutely no windows. Yet, paradoxically, it's incredibly bright. And even stranger, he can't spot a single lamp or light fixture anywhere. The illumination, in his own words, simply existed. To make matters worse, as they pass other people in the halls, Melvin realizes his eyes just won't focus on their faces. The entire environment is sterile, vast, and fundamentally breaks the laws of physics.
At this point, Melvin's mind is still desperately trying to cling to logic. He rationalizes the whole situation by assuming he's just been brought here by some terrible clerical or administrative mistake. He quietly resolves to sneak out at his very first opportunity and just run down the nearest road. I mean, it's a totally normal human coping mechanism, right? Assuming that a mix-up at the DMV or the local hospital is to blame for your nightmare rather than anything genuinely malevolent.
Section 3. The seamless cast. A medical anomaly.
So Morgan leads him into a small outer room, tells him to sit, and just abandons him. Minutes later, this heavy, unnatural drowsiness washes over Melvin. Right before he loses consciousness, a quiet panic sets in. He suddenly remembers that gigantic, freaky strawberry from the garden and wonders, had something been put into the fruit he had eaten? Think about the last time you felt that sudden, terrifying realization that you'd ingested something bad. Now multiply that dread by 100. The paranoia is fully setting in, and he realizes he's been completely compromised.
Imagine the sheer, absolute horror of waking up from a blackout like that. When Melvin regains consciousness, he's still in the same room, but everything about him has been altered. He's now wearing a strange tunic that looks kind of like a hospital gown, and secured tightly from his right elbow all the way down to his forearm is this strange cast. He describes it as being made of a seamless white plastic, almost like medieval armor, but it's retrofitted with thick protruding tubes. He doesn't feel any pain, but he has absolutely zero memory of how this device was attached to his body.
When Morgan finally strolls back into the room, he offers absolutely no comfort and zero explanation. When confronted about this terrifying, medieval-looking plastic cast, Morgan offers what literally might be the worst bedside manner in human history. He casually dismisses it with one single word, necessary. He's entirely evasive and just immediately abandons Melvin once again, leaving him all alone to pry and pull at the white plastic in a desperate attempt to free himself. Tracing Melvin's timeline reveals this terrifying descent through a series of disjointed, entirely unexplainable blackouts. After trying to pry off the cask, he blacks out again. He wakes up, missing an unknown amount of time, and the cask is just gone. He remembers unhooking a large tube that he felt went straight through his skin, but when he checks his bare arm, completely normal. No marks, no puncture wounds whatsoever. Two silent women in white walk past him like he doesn't even exist. And then he blacks out yet again, only to suddenly wake up outside in the dead of night. His continuity of time and space is just completely obliterated.
Section 4. Incomprehensible, strange encounters.
Waking up outside provides this stark, almost violent sensory contrast to the interior of Ruelles. Inside, he was trapped in this bright, sourceless light, surrounded by silent, cold white marble. Now, suddenly he's outside in the pitch dark. The ground beneath him is slick like it just rained, reflecting the night sky in deep pools of water. The environment just flips from an endless, sterile interior to a vast, dark, wet exterior in the blink of an eye.
And standing right over him in this wet darkness is a strange woman. She has a deeply concerned expression on her face, and bizarrely, she's dressed in this incredibly lavish, ornate evening gown, like she's attending a royal ball or something. She's looking right at his bare arm and pointing frantically at where the cast used to be, clearly trying to warn him about something super urgent, but when she speaks, her words come out in this strange, muffled cadence. Melvin simply cannot comprehend a single word she's saying. It's literally the ultimate nightmare scenario, right? Someone is finally trying to help you, but the very laws of human communication have been entirely rewritten. And then, true to form, he loses consciousness again.
Section 5. Hoping for the fall, embracing the end.
After another blackout, Melvin wakes up back inside the palace. A woman walks by. He assumes she's a nurse, and Melvin begs to know what's happening. She stops and casually informs him that the building is under siege. An unseen force on the outside is trying to gain entrance, and they are going to take over the facility. Then, completely unbothered, she just walks away and disappears. The entire sprawling marble complex falls utterly silent.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer weight of his isolation. He is entirely alone. Have you ever felt so deeply trapped in a system that you felt physically and psychologically swallowed up by it? There's no one to talk to, nowhere to go, and absolutely nothing to look at but sourceless light and white stone. He's just sitting there on a cold marble bench, waiting for the end.
But instead of panicking about the impending invasion, a strange hope actually rises in his chest. As he sits there, feeling the heavy, mounting pressure in the air of the force coming to claim the building, Melvin actively prays for their success. He reasons that if this unseen force breaks through, maybe they'll free him. Maybe, finally, they will be someone he can talk to, someone who will understand the absolute horror of what has been done to him. He knows with absolute certainty that the destruction of this place will be a good thing.
As we wrap up this explainer, we really have to ponder Melvin's final, provocative choice. How completely must your autonomy and your reality be stripped away for you to eagerly await the destruction of the very walls around you? It leaves us to wonder, what exactly would you pray for if you ever found yourself trapped in the silent halls of Ruelles? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the human psyche. See you next time.